I wanted to fly because I had been on the ground in Vietnam and that sucked. So I wanted to avoid all of that. And I did, except for the few times I got shot down. I was on the ground for a while. This was the cockpit of an old B-model Huey, which had a crew of 4 and all kinds of doors that opened. That's what we flew until we got the Cobras. The Cobra was 36 inches wide, and that was in the cockpit. That's the rear seat of a Cobra. And that would cruise at 240 miles an hour. The Vietnamese had a saying, and it says, "Don't shoot the skinny ones. Don't shoot at the skinny ones," meaning the Cobra. With the Cobra, you could set your controls over salvo. You could put 76 rockets on the ground in about 8 seconds, which was exciting. We operated as far south as Vung Tau and as far north as Bu Dap, which was about 100 miles north and south, over to Tay Ninh, which was about 75 miles or maybe 80 miles east and west. We were responsible for everything in that area of operation. A typical mission was either reconnaissance, where you would go out with another Cobra and 2 scout helicopters, and they would fly around and beat the grass and try to find the enemy. And the other missions were scrambles. When the horn goes off, you've got 2 minutes to get that helicopter in the air and en route to the target. Of the 1,200 combat missions I flew, more than 1,000 involved long-range reconnaissance patrols that the Rangers ran. And these poor bastards would go out in the jungle for a while by themselves, and they would smack Charlie in the nose, and then they would call us and say, "Okay, come get us." We were sitting there minding our own business, thinking, let's hope we don't get called tonight, and bam, the horn went off. I knew a frequency and I knew a direction, and it was Wildcat 2. Well, this was a team of LRRPs that were controlled by Bob Elsner. Bob was either a Sergeant E7 or a private, depending on who he had smarted off to. That night he was a private. And he said, well, we're in a rice paddy in a village south of Cohn, and there's probably 100 people in here with us. I said, okay, let's go down and see what we can find. So I located him with my radio beacon and flew over him, and he said, okay, you're right directly overhead. He said, can you provide some artillery? And I said, no, not really, Bob, because I don't know where I am and I don't know what the coordinates are. But I know what the coordinates of that village are. I'll call and get some magnesium parachute flares over that village and it'll light up. And I'll come down low level and scoot across the ground and everything will be backlit. So that's what we did. And we turned loose 152 rockets and 16,000 rounds of minigun. They were still outnumbered 15 to 1, maybe 16 to 1. And I said, Bob, do you have any Claymore mines? And he said, yes, got 4. And I said, well, you're completely surrounded, and I want you to point 2 of your Claymore mines to the north, 2 on 135-degree azimuth. And when I say blow them, you blow them and run like hell. We're going to blow a hole in that ring. And then the Tactical Operations Center said, no, you don't pick them up. They're trained to escape and evade. And I said, there's no place for them to escape and evade. Dude, please stay off my radio. And so I said, you ready, Bob? He said, ready. So we went down. I shut out all the lights and landed in the dark. They were running in the direction they were supposed to run. But I noticed that only 3 of them were running. One of them kept lagging. And they were out of ammunition. So he had a bag of grenades, and he would drop back about every 50 feet and throw grenades at the North Vietnamese regulars. And then he would run another 50 or 60 feet and throw more grenades. And finally we all arrived at the same hole in the mud, and they jumped on. And the patrol leader, Bob, and the man in front was Paddy from Maryville, Tennessee. They jumped on and smacked the side of the ship. And then Billy Cohn and Dave Hill jumped on the rocket pod and slapped the canopy. So I had the lights out and I just pulled the pitch and went up to 1,500 foot hover. I called my co-pilot, who sits right in front of you, and he said, we've got them. He said, what are you going to do with them, sir? I said, what do you want to do with them? We can't take them home. They'll freeze to death before we get them here because they're sopping wet. And you fly them at 150 miles an hour, they lose grip and fall off. He says, let's take them down to the water treatment plants. It's about 3 minutes down the river. We'll drop them off inside the fence and then we'll go home. He said, but be advised, we got a 20-minute fuel light that's on. Okay, I said, how long has it been on? He said, about 5 minutes. I said, oh, man. So we're going to make a 25-minute flight on 20 minutes worth of fuel. He said, in essence. I said, okay. So I landed, and I used a light because I'd never been in there before. And they all rolled off and ran to the front of the ship and got out from under the rotor blade, and they went to the fence, and they all turned around, which means we're okay, thank you. But that's what we did. We took care of the LRRPs and the Rangers. That's what I looked like in Germany, cleaned up with hair. Never had any more hair than that in Vietnam. No reason to, and now chemotherapy keeps it bald. But this was when I was in the 2nd Armored Cav, Jeremiah. Decorations, that's a Silver Star, 4 Distinguished Flying Crosses, a couple of Bronze Stars, 44 Air Medals, 2 Army Commendations, Vietnam Service. That's Vietnam. That's the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry campaign, and that's the Vietnamese Service. This was the night that we picked them up, and as you can see, there's no place to put them. This was Bob, that was the patrol leader. This was Paddy from Maryville, Tennessee. He was a radio operator. They jumped on that side. This was Billy Cohn, and this was Dave Hill. Dave was the last one in. He's the one with the empty M2 carbine and the empty bag of grenades. He fought the rear guard action and for that. He was awarded a Silver Star. There was no place to get, so that's where they got it. My co-pilot looked out and said, yeah, there's two people staring at me in this window, and I see two muddy butts on the rocket pods. We got all four of them.